Hi, Blasphemous is hard, and even though Blasphemous bosses are not as difficult as something like Console Rodan, they're still difficult enough to give you that satisfaction after beating them. So in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all of the Blasphemous 1 and 2 and its DLC bosses from easiest to hardest. The easiest boss in the Blasphemous franchise is Warden of the Silent Sorrows, because it's a tutorial boss from Blasphemous 1, so it's there just to help the player understand the game and learn it, and it only has two attacks that are very easy to deal with. In the 30th spot I have Faceless One, Chisel of Oblivion. This is a tutorial boss from Blasphemous 2 and it has very simple attacks, probably like 3 or 2, but the only thing that's keeping him from the last place is that his attacks are take a bit more effort to dodge. In 29th spot I have 10 Pidat, and this boss is very simple. It's kinda your introduction and kinda you use everything that you learned up to that point, but because it's kinda early in the game of Blasphemous 1, he doesn't have any really complicated attacks and overall it's just a simple boss fight. In the 28th spot I have Exposito's Scion of Abjuration, and this boss overall is very disappointing because the design is very cool, but the fight itself is very lackluster, because it has very easy attacks to deal with and it has a lot of openings, and sometimes when he is attacking you can just go behind him, destroy him while he cannot do anything about it to interfere with your damage. In the 27th spot I have Malquides, the Exhumed Archbishop. This guy is a fun boss fight, I really like the idea, but even though the idea is very cool, I do think it's very simple. All you have to do is kill his hands and then damage his skull, and his attacks that he does are not very threatening and you can easily learn them during the fight, not even succumbing to one death. In the 26th spot I have Brother Asterion, and this is the first DLC fight. It's Mea Culpa's DLC from Blasphemous 2, and this guy is it's too simple for where it is in the progression of the story. At this point the player probably has learned a lot of skills and can easily deal with whatever this boss dishes out, and I just think he's placed too late into the game. Overall, other than that, it's a pretty cool fight but way too simple. In 25th spot I have Tres Anguistas, and there are three, so they attack separately, but because they don't usually attack at the same time, it's kinda easy to deal with them. And in the second phase the fight becomes maybe a bit harder with her lasers, but honestly she's a bit too slow to make it challenging because the openings are kinda easy to punish. In the 24th spot I have Our Lady of the Shared Visage, and it's a bullet hell type boss, especially when she goes into her second phase and gets a second hand. But the problem is the damage that you get is actually really not that bad, so you can actually tank a lot of hits. And second of all, apart from few combinations with her hand attacks, most of the time it's very manageable. In the 23rd spot I have Orospina, Lady Embroiderer, and it's a fast-paced fight that is very fun, one of the most fun fights in the series for me. But because of that fun, most of her attacks are very counterable, so it's very easy to punish her, and her magic attacks or clone attacks are very easy to deal with, maybe after like 1 or 2 attempts. In the 22nd spot I have Curse, Returned by the Flame. It's a blast of a fight, I really enjoy it, and I enjoy the fake out, how you start the battle, but overall the fight is very fun to learn with his attacks, but his attacks are way too slow and you can easily react to them, so the moment you learn the fight, which will be kinda quick, you can easily beat this boss fight. In the 21st spot I have Lesmes, Incorrupsa Kristen, and this guy, it's quite an easy fight, but the biggest thing about it, it's an endurance fight and it has 3 phases, so this makes it much more difficult compared to the others below it, because the first phase is him, then it's a little girl, and then you fight at the end them together. And I do think the fight overall is quite simple, but because of its length, it gets a 21st spot. In the 20th spot I have Final Form Escribar, and for a secret boss fight all I'm gonna say is it's a slog of a fight, and it's a slog of a fight of a middling difficulty because the guy is not that fun. I think it's a bit of too long of a fight, and I do say him not having a health bar makes it so it feels like you're fighting him for forever. And I will say there is some cool but overall there is just nothing really interesting that he does. He's just an average middling boss fight. In the 19th spot I have Afilaor, Sentinel of Emery. This guy overall is a really cool fight, has some hard attacks, but other than that has a few tricky attacks that you kind of have to realize how to deal with, and they're fun to deal with, but afterwards the fight itself becomes quite simple. Yes, there is some difficulty, especially at his final phase where his sword turns red and he starts spamming and going a bit crazy, and this is where maybe the most of the challenge comes for. Other than that, the fight is very manageable and not that difficult. In the 18th spot I have Great Perceptor Radames, and all I'm gonna say is his attacks are a bit more challenging compared to the bosses below, because you actually have a wall that you have to use to climb up to dodge some of his attacks, and it actually kind of can get overwhelming, and some of his attacks need some precise timing to be able to be dodged. I will say though, compared to most of the bosses, he has an opposite effect of his second phase being, at least for me, easier than his first phase. Maybe I'm the only one, but I will say if he was the whole time in his first phase, maybe the placement would be even higher. In the 17th spot I have Benedicta of Endless Orison. In this fight, the moment you learn it, it's quite easy. I think you can deal it, apart from maybe one orb attack that she does, that it's kind of hard and tricky even when you realize what you need to do. But I will say, out of all the bosses probably, well, apart from maybe top 5, I would say this was the hardest one to learn, because I just kinda didn't use my brain and what to do at certain pillar attacks, and kinda got confused with her teleports to the sides. But other than that, the fight, it's kinda hard to learn, but the moment you learn it, it probably should go well for you. 16th spot I have Sor Cotiva del Silencio, or Captive Sisters of Silence, and this fight it's a fast-paced fight with a lot of stuff happening. I will say it's been quite some time since the last time I fought her, so maybe this ranking is a bit unfair to her, but I will say the fight is on a bit more of a higher difficulty side, because it has a lot of happening with them spawning random sand monsters that make it much more hard to stand just on the ground and dodge attacks. But the hardest thing about it probably is her laser attack, especially when she is low on health. It becomes very fast and you have to be quite reactive to be able to dodge her attacks. It's still a blast of a fight, but I maybe have forgotten a bit of how difficult it was. In the 15th spot I have Sirpis, and all I'm gonna say is it's just a solid fight that has really cool attacks, but I will say they're kind of simplistic, and even though there is some difficulty in dodging them, I will say I think it's more of a difficulty of how much HP he has and not with his complication on attacks. In the 14th spot I have Amenicida of the Bejeweled Arrow. This is the another boss from the DLC of Blasphemous 1. And all I'm gonna say, out of all the Amenicidas, this one is the easiest. As the archer guy, I think his attacks are the most simple and easy to dodge, even though they're still hard and kinda unforgiving. In the 13th spot I have Amenicida of the Chiseled Steel, and all I'm gonna say is his projectiles are very annoying, but the moment you learn that you can just hit them with your sword to bounce them back, it's not that bad. And sometimes, especially in the small arena, you can sometimes corner you and do a lot of damage to you, but other than that, a very manageable fight, but definitely on a harder scale of things. In the 12th spot I have Esdras of the Anointed Legion, and all I'm gonna say, the first phase is not that bad but very fun. You have to mix in deflecting, parrying, blocking, dodging, sliding to be able to deal with him. But after he gets low on HP, he calls his sister, and this is where the fun begins, because you have to react very fast and not get overwhelmed, because it easily can just get out of control and you're just dying. So I think it definitely deserves at least the 12th spot. In the 11th spot I have Odon of the Confraternity of Salt, and this boss fight has a bit of a, at least to me, a tricky moveset that even when you realize what to do, you sometimes struggle to pull off some of the dodges and moves to dodge those attacks. And his ads are a bit hard to manage, but after you learn it, I think it's not that bad. Overall, a long fight that's very fun and satisfying to beat. In the 10th spot I have Amenicida of the Golden Blades, and this guy is quite simple and straightforward, but even though you know his attacks, it's kinda hard to dodge. So that's all I'm gonna say. A bit difficult, but for me personally, it deserves this spot. In the 9th spot, I have Amenicida of the Molten Throne, and everything I said about the Golden Blades stands for him. Is like, it's kinda simple, but it's even harder to react to some of his attacks, and he is quite punishing, and in my opinion, his rage attacks are the hardest to manage, using both platforms to not get damaged, and overall, it's just a fun fight that is it's more difficult than the previous brothers. In the 8th spot, I have Last Son of the Miracle, and all I'm gonna say is it's kind of the epitome of everything you learn. You have to use it here because it's the final boss of Blasphemous 1, and this guy overall is pretty difficult. It's manageable, but it's difficult because you have clouds, base platforms that you have to use to get to his face that disappear, so if it's bad timing you won't get to punish him. And the way you punish him is by destroying his sword's eye, and then his face opens up, face armor or whatever you want to call it, and then you can damage him for a bit. It kind of takes a while and you need to kind of be perfect because it's an endurance fight and it's quite hard. Not talking about the fact that in the first phase you just fight an old man, that it's very simple, but other than that, it's a boss fight that tests your limits, at least in Blasphemous 1. In the 7th spot I have Devotion Incarnate, and this is the final boss of Blasphemous 2. It kinda is basically the same, like in Last Son of the Miracle. All I'm gonna say is maybe it could be even easier if you look at it from the side that you probably already beat in Blasphemous 1 and then 2, so you probably have more experience fighting this kind of boss again. But still, I do think some of his DPS checks with the flowers make it a bit harder, and I will say some of the attacks are low-key kinda hard to dodge even when you know what's happening, and it's kinda hard to deal with when the ground becomes on fire. But other than that, a fun boss fight that I actually enjoyed more than I previously thought, and overall it's kinda hard. In the 6th spot I have Sona Formosa Femra. And all I'm gonna say, I don't know how the community thinks about this boss, but I think it's definitely a lot more difficult than I expected. This boss fight was insane for me, because everything she does is quite simple, apart from her one attack when she starts circling around and shooting raw orbs. To me, this was very annoying to learn, especially on a lower HP. She starts being more frantic with her moveset and she starts shooting these orbs more randomly. It's really, I felt like a badass when I finally beat her, but I will say I had to step away and be like, breathe, everything's fine. After I did that, I beat her, so maybe I should have done that from the start. Just kind of came in with the French mindset. I don't know, but for me personally, because of that one attack, she deserves top 6. In the 5th spot and in the top 5, I have Synodo, Hymn of the Thousand Voices. And this guy is actually a really unique fight that I really enjoy. I think it's one of the coolest ones, and basically it has like 3 faces, actual literal faces that he changes to, and depending on which face he changes, or she or whatever changes to, the type of attacks you're gonna dodge. Now the most difficult are probably the guy that has a metallic face, where he starts spamming a lot of projectiles and it becomes kind of a bullet hell boss, and if you can deal with that, it's not that hard. Then you kind of have to hit it sometimes, because if you don't break it, the seal, she's gonna heal, or they them, whatever you want to call it. And after you finally get this boss fight to his final HP, he makes the floor on lava, and you have to jump between the rings while dashing through the wall that keeps going from side to side, and jumping and hitting his head until it dies. Really sick, really cool, but actually a step up in difficulty in my opinion, because it's actually quite challenging and pushes some of the limits of Blasphemous. In the top 4, I have Laudes, the first of the Amenicidas, and it basically has every previous Amenicidas moveset, and just makes it a bit harder, and overall the fight is a bit harder because some of the area sometimes changes and some of the movements gets alterations, and kind of dealing with all the different movesets in one fight, it's much more challenging. But I'm not gonna stay too long on this boss fight because it's just Amenicidas, but now with their movesets and just harder. He's not that unique. In the 3rd spot, I have Cristana of the Wrapped Agony, and it's all I'm gonna say is it's a challenging boss. The first phase is not that bad, but the second phase is actually insane. It's actually really difficult. I didn't expect it to be that difficult because her attacks are very fast and sometimes hard to counter. But it's only one of those bosses that is just a blast to fight, because the challenge feels very difficult but fair. And some of the attacks, yes, it might be a bit frustrating with how fast they come out, but if you're able to parry him and deal with her and her teleporting into different angles that you have to dodge, it's honestly really fun. And the fight itself is kind of turned a bit to 11 compared to some previous bosses before this one. But other than that, one of my favorite fights in the whole game, and just a big challenge to overcome in this game. In the second spot, I have Of Eternal Father of the Penitents. And the first phase is a really chill, honestly, very easy. It has some projectiles, it teleports, but it's really not threatening. If it was only the first phase, it probably would go to something like top 20 or even lower. But the second phase, it's like Cristana, but even more turned to like 12 now, because the fight itself is actually really insane, and some of these combos are kind of hard. I will say learning the second phase is kind of difficult because how much damage he does and how aggressive he is. So you sometimes just gonna get 3 comboed and die in the first like 3 seconds. But after you learn it, the fight is insane. Like, I still remember you kind of like dodge back, jump through the slash, then dodge, like he teleports, you jump up. Like, all of his attacks are very intriguing and very combo based, so you kind of just have to, in like normal Dark Souls faction, just wait out the combos and just hit him. And it felt like with the previous bosses, not all of them, but with so many bosses, you were like kind of have to hit them between their movesets and don't care. With this boss fight, you have to wait out the attacks. You have to parry, dodge, block the attacks until you find a punishing window. And honestly, some of his aerial attacks are very hard to dodge, but it's honestly a blast of a fight that is an insane ceiling of difficulty compared to his first phase. In the first place, I have Isadora, Voice of the Dead, and this is easily for me the hardest boss fight. I will say in the first phase she's really difficult, like top 5 difficult, but it's actually not that bad compared to her second phase. She has a lot of fast attacks that you have to need to parry, to dodge. Sometimes she gets invisible I mean, and you just have to deal with her. Some of her difficult movesets, some you have to dodge. But the real difficulty and what makes her the first place here for me easily is her second phase, because she starts doing even more crazy shit, but most of it is kind of the same. But now you have fire orbs that keep following you that you cannot break, and you just need to dodge or use a special skill that kind of blocks, like the barrier that blocks projectiles. Without it, this fight is actually outrageous. And sometimes he just powers up by the fire and starts summoning tornadoes of fire below your feet that you have to keep moving and dodging. It's honestly a crazy fight that kind of works on your footsies in this game, on your movement, which is really fun. But it's the only fight that it took me like 2-3 hours. Like all the other fights, like even like Of Eternal and Chrysanta took me like an hour. This boss fight took me 3, so it's honestly really insane, but the most rewarding one out of all of them. So that's all. That's my ranking. Tell me in the comments what in your opinion is like the top 5 hardest bosses. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.